Hi, everyone. Welcome to DBC Inc. Live. We are so happy that you joined us tonight. As you are joining in, please do tell us who you are, where you're from. I am Tara. I'll be your host tonight. And we have Michael in the house. Super excited to have him.
Hey, everybody. Wait, who's Michael? Is it the dog or is it me?
It's you.
All right. I like
Michael is
it.
you.
It's hard to follow a dog that's that cute, Tara. It's a little unfair what you're doing here.
She won't be here the whole time. And this is
Okay.
Honey. Honey is making her her debut, her first visit to the live. Say hi. Tell everybody hi.
Hey, honey.
I know you guys have heard me talk about that we are getting a puppy. I've been talking about it, I guess, since Daryl put it in my stocking for Christmas. And we finally got her. We got her on Sunday. And so she's adjusting well. She got introduced to the home gym today. So all is well. But Michael, I know that our crowd is just super excited to hear from you. And so tell us a little bit about you, what you do. I will say one of you is going to win his book. And he has a book called Skyrocket, Your Teacher Coaching. It's incredible. He runs his own business that is that same business, the same message that he shares with the world all over. So super excited to have you join us tonight, Michael. Please do tell everybody a little bit about you and where you're from and what you do.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. I just want to say I see some folks in the chat are on break. So, and I'm on break as well. So enjoy if you're on spring break. And if you're almost there, keep hanging in there. So yeah, I live in New York. I have a company called Skyrocket Education. We coach school leaders and teachers around the country, primarily in urban areas. The belief is that we can lift up an entire school and school system if we make all the leaders as effective as possible. And so thanks, Kristen. And so yeah, that's what we do. We're coaches. Our approach is not for the faint of heart. We are definitely really intentional about our practice, and I'm excited to we work with charters, faith-based district schools around the country, and I'm excited to be here with you all tonight.
We are so excited. I love your message. I love your book. I feel like it's so intentional.
Yeah.
It's intentional coaching. And I really appreciate that. I feel like that's exactly what we need in our school system. We have to be super intentional about what we're doing when we want to get great results. So super excited to hear from you tonight. But as you are joining in the chat, please do tell us a little bit about, if you're on break, maybe something exciting that happened for you this week. I know I just shared my excitement. It has been so interesting having a puppy around. And she liked joining in on the live. If you missed it, you'll have to go back and watch the playback. She was here earlier. She headed off with Dad to be a puppy. And so thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about how things are going in your world. And Michael, we might just turn it over to you and let you share what's on your heart, what you've been thinking about. Enlighten us, share something that we can take and potentially use tomorrow in our learning setting if we wanted to.
Yeah, so the thing I wanted to talk about tonight was just around how school leaders can intentionally design practice for their teachers, for a profession that is focused on making people better at things and teaching them and making them more effective. I'm talking here about students. We do surprisingly little of this from the leader to teacher level. Instead, what mostly happens, and I know we have some teachers on here who can probably relate, either teachers don't see their leaders at all, or they see them twice a year for evaluations, or which they may agree with or may not, and it's usually on a framework that's 40 pages long or at least 10 pages long, and teachers are often left frustrated, annoyed, confused, not always, but sometimes left feeling that way. And then when there are schools where coaching or observation rather is more normalized, what the debriefs usually look like is a list of 5 or 8 things that that the teacher should do differently, but very little by way of, or very little in the way of like tangible, practical, let me show you what this looks like, and then you can be better at this tomorrow. I'll share, when I was a first-year teacher, my assistant principal came into my room, and she was great and brilliant, but she said, you should use popsicle sticks to call in more students, but didn't give me any direction as to what that actually looks like. That's probably the simplest thing a teacher can do, but I didn't know how to do it. So I asked a colleague, and they told me to write students' names on the popsicle sticks and put it in an empty coffee can. And the next day I shook it up and pulled out the student's name and called on the student. And then after she responded, I put her name back in. And the kids in the class went crazy. And they said, no, she's done. You already called on her. She's out. And I said, no, that can't be possible. We still have 50 minutes left of class. She can't be off the hook for the rest of the lesson. And the students are now yelling at me. And those of you who are either our first-year teachers or remember what that's like, I was terrified. I was like, no, stop yelling at me. And I was confused. And the point is, I never used the popsicle sticks ever again, because nobody really modeled for me like what this looks like, and for something so simple, right? And so when you think about more nuanced things like giving really clear direction, or asking higher order questions, or getting students to use academic language, what we do at Skyrocket and what we coach others to do is to actually to provide a model. What does this look like when done really well? Don't make suggestions about things. If the teacher knew how to do it, they do it. Teachers they walk through fire for kids, right? If you want the teacher to give clearer directions, assume that if they're not, it's because they don't know how, right? Otherwise they would. So you've got to provide a model, even if it's something as basic as pulling names out of a coffee can. So what we say to coaches is provide a really clear model for teachers, and then actually model it for them, right? It's one thing to have it written down, but if the thing's done standing up, stand up, show them. This requires a level of vulnerability and confidence, and willingness to look foolish, that a lot of school leaders and coaches don't necessarily have. I think they should, but often they don't. We've talked to them and they say, well, I don't want to do it wrong. Or what if I'm not as much of an expert as my teacher wants me to be? And maybe I'll be found out for not being as good at this job as I should be, and things like that. It's the wrong mindset to have. We're all learning on this together, but you've got to provide for somebody the physical model of what the thing looks like, and then have them practice it. Not one time, not 2 times, not until they just get one good rep, but well past that, right? The basketball coach doesn't have the players stop practicing once they hit one foul shot, right? Or one layup, right? That's the beginning of the practice. That's the beginning of building automaticity. And it's so often missing in a profession where making people better is really at the heart of it.
I think that is just it's so simple yet profound. And simple as in it shouldn't be hard for us to do that, right? It shouldn't be hard as leaders, but also as teachers, to students. I think a lot of times this works for any teaching and learning. When you're trying to get someone to do something, if you could show them and you can model for them, what does this look like, sound like, feel like, well, first of all, it gives you some street cred too. Like you actually know what you're talking about.
That's
like
right.
You said earlier, some people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Well, yeah, you need to do that. Like this is part of your job. That's what we do. And as an administrator, I know it was really important to me. Like we adopted 2 new curriculum, and I was working at the district office, and coaching was my background. So that's my heart. Like you definitely know this about me, but twice a month I taught in the classroom. I loved taking, we would draw names out of the teachers, and they would have an opportunity for me to come take over their classroom, and they could run to Sonic, or they could stay and watch me if they wanted
Oh, cool, cool.
Well, a lot of times they wanted to stay and watch because they were like,
Mm-hmm.
nobody from the admin office ever comes and teaches in my class.
Yeah,
What are you talking?
that's
I
right,
don't even
right.
know if they can teach. But I loved it. And what I would do during that time is practice with our brand new curriculum that we are adopting, because what I was asking teachers to do, I wanted to make sure that I could actually do it.
That's
Like,
right.
could I actually get all those things in? Because I'm a decent teacher and I knew I could teach pretty much any grade level. I have never really taught high school, but I wasn't afraid of it. I was going to give it a shot. And it worked. You know, like I learned some stuff through the process. I learned right away that we were asking, like, for our time frame, the things we were asking them to do with actual human bodies sitting in front of you was not really possible. And so we changed the expectations for the principals on the to give to the teachers. Like we had to say, like, you know, Tara's gone into 4 different classrooms, 3 different grade levels, and this isn't possible. This is really
working.
what we're asking is not actually going to work. So let's switch it around a little bit. We're going to do this and this. We changed our curriculum mapping, and we were trying out that curriculum for the first time that year anyway. And so I just think it's so important to show all those that we lead, it doesn't matter from where, that we're all learning through the process. And that's the thing about modeling. Maybe it isn't perfect, but right away you can say, you know what did we learn from this? And how could we adjust, like brainstorm together? Like, how could we adjust even what I mentioned and actually make it work? Because it didn't even work for me. So let's just try this together. Let's try to brainstorm and figure out a different way. And I think at that point, they feel like they're on the same team as you. Like we're working together. We're going to move this forward.
Yeah, it's a great example, and there's a credibility that you build when you stand in somebody's shoes, when you show them that you understand what it's like to stand in their shoes. You know, I'm convinced that the most kind of the boldest, most courageous 6 words in our work are "Let me model this for you."
Yes.
Because it doesn't happen enough. There's a great meme that's going around now. It's probably been around for years, but I just saw it recently, and it says how to draw a wolf. And it says step 1, draw a circle. And then step 2, it says add details. And the details is the completed wolf's head with multicolored hair, thousands of little, hairs, and beautiful big eyes, and, a snout. And I just feel like there's a lot of that happening in our work where it's like, hey, do this incredibly hard thing with almost no support. Oops, it didn't work. Now you're disinvested in me. I'm talking teachers to teachers to leaders, students to teachers.
Yes.
And we've got to provide really clear steps for people and model for them if we want them to get better. Otherwise, we are having the same conversations with teachers in May that we were having in September, and then folks they become disinvested. I mean, there are people I'm certain on this call, and I won't ask you all to name yourselves because I don't want to jeopardize your jobs, but I am certain there are people on this call who think their bosses don't know what they're talking about, are totally out of touch with what's actually happening in their room. Couldn't potentially do their jobs if they had to. And that's a problem. And we never tell leaders, you don't have to be an expert at everything from phonics to physics. You do have to be an expert at lesson design and delivery, and be able to look at a classroom, a direct instruction that lasts 37 minutes long. You've got to be able to, and barring some unforeseen or exception that I can't think of right now, that's too long. And leaders need to be able to look at that and say, hey, here's why it went so long. Here are some things I think we can do to shorten it. Let me model those moves for you right now. And then I'm going to ask you to practice it on tomorrow's lesson, next week's lesson, et cetera. And it's almost entirely missing. And, as a side note, not to get too soapboxy here, we work at, some of the, we work in almost entirely urban areas, and you name it, Detroit, Chicago, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, New York, like, you find a place where poverty's high and trauma's high and infrastructure is low and funding is low, and we're likely there. And it is a real frustration of mine that so much of the blame for what's happening is put on the students and their background and their families and what they can't do, when school leaders are almost universally, that's probably too broad. School leaders are most often not actually making their teachers more effective, and are just making either totally ignoring it, barely stopping in, or when they do, giving like 7 or 8 suggestions that, as I said with my example of the popsicle sticks, even something that simple, I needed more modeling. I didn't know how to do it. And I gave up right away.
Yeah. And I think that's what happens. And I think this happens I feel like this is just a great way to live life, right? I mean,
Right.
you're always leading, you're always teaching. It doesn't matter what you do. Like there's somewhere in your role that you're going to be teaching and somebody's going to be learning. And, I hate bringing up the analogy of CrossFit, but it's just a great one because my coaches, they all the time, I always think it's kind of silly that they model every single move. But when we are warming up for strength training or warming up for gymnastics, they get on the bar. And it doesn't matter if all 14 of us in the class have been there for 2 years.
Yeah.
We still model best practice, a safe practice with every move before they release us to do the thing when they're walking around giving us feedback the whole time. But
Tara, go ahead, please.
I see why it's so important, because oftentimes we get, even if you're a great teacher, you just get into this thing where you're just doing what you do. And it's nice if somebody comes in and says, you know what, let me show you. I just want to model something for you. I want to do this with you, maybe co-teach with you. Like you teach the content, I'll give them the opportunities to respond, and let's just see how this works. Let's see if it'll work. And a lot of times, the kids will respond really well to it. But I know in CrossFit, it's so nice when they model it all the time and they never fail. Like it's part of the program. They have to do it. And I always appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, to talk to your second part first, even if you're a great teacher thing, look, Serena Williams has a coach. Tom Brady has a coach.
Exactly.
Simone Biles has a coach. I've met great teachers in my day, great teachers. I've never met a Simone Biles, right? So that means everybody can get better, right? And I'll put myself at the top of the list. So great teacher or novice, 20 years, 20 days, we can all get better, right? So we have to blow up this mindset. And you're not suggesting this, but like we have to blow up this mindset in our profession that if somebody's been around for X amount of time, that they're like a master, above feedback, above coaching. The second thing is, to your CrossFit point, it's everything. I mean, if you walked into a piano lesson and your teacher you just talked about the piano, which is what's happening in so many debrief meetings. Hey, Tara, let's imagine I'm the leader, you're the teacher. Hey, Tara, we really have to call on more students. We want to really more deeply engage students and make your questions more rigorous. And then I'm gone. Like, and I'm abridging that conversation, but they usually go on like that. How do I know? I've seen hundreds of them, hundreds. And think about in any other walk of life. If you walked into a piano lesson and your teacher made some suggestions about, hey, you should really learn how to play chopsticks. Yeah. And even if they went so far as to play, you should play these keys first and then these keys, that it would be, oh, are you frozen? Hello? Are you there? I'm not sure if I'm still there. Hello? Okay. Somebody in the chat, let me know if you still hear me. I don't hear you. I don't see Tara. Hey, are you there?
We're back. We're back. Just a little moment.
Yeah. I don't know what happened, but just get back to, you are, but she froze. Okay, got it. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Yesenia. If you walked into a piano lesson and the teacher said, hey, you should learn how to play chopsticks, you'd be like, okay, cool. If they said, hey, you should hit these keys and then these keys, but you never actually put your fingers on the keys, if they never actually sat next to you and said, hey, let me show you how to do this, you would think that was insane, right? If you walked into a class to learn how to speak Mandarin and the teacher said, this is really exciting, I have some great ideas around how you can speak Mandarin, but they never modeled and you never spoke Mandarin, but they expected you to speak it after that, you would think it was insane. You would think it was insane and you would never go back and you would ask for a refund. It's happening in schools all the time. It's totally unfair to teachers. It's unfair to kids. Leaders have to do better.
Yeah, it's so true. I love this, and I love this topic, and I think it's so important for all of us that are listening, and even teachers. You know, like we can't change our leaders, right? As teachers, hopefully the leaders are listening in as well. But we can offer this same exact model for our students, and it's so important. You know, like I said, when they model that gymnastics move that I've seen them model 1,000 times, there's so many times I'm like, okay, like I already have that. But sometimes I watch it just a little bit different. I'm like, wow, I've never actually gripped my hand across the bar like that. Like, could you I want to try that on the next time. And it's these little tiny, once you're looking at it, you're like, it's these little tiny adjustments that make things so much smoother. So never underestimate modeling for your students. They're like, go on, I already know how to do this. I know how to use this app. I've used it 1,000 times. Model it again, because there could be the one time that you show them that something clicks for the high achiever, something clicks for the lower achiever. It doesn't matter, but we're showing them what we're expecting. And then they're not as scared because they know, okay, they've shown me, they'll come by, they're going to give me feedback. That's what happens in CrossFit. They're like, come by, they give you feedback specifically. And they're like, remember when I showed you this? Let me show you again. Let me show you again. And I think that's how we get better. We meet people where they're at and we show them how to do it. Then we meet them where they're at and we just kind of keep adjusting and tweaking, adjusting and tweaking until they get to this place where they feel very proficient in what they're doing.
Well, look, expertise builds expertise. And so you are more able to look at those moves that 2 years ago, you were probably like, whoa, that's a lot. And now you're looking at the actual, probably the spacing between the person's fingers on the bars, the nuance, right? It's where, you know, like I go back to the piano example. I don't play piano. I just think it's a great analogy for the work we do, but I couldn't play Tchaikovsky right now in a million years. Like, if you gave me $1 million in a million years, I could learn. But if you gave me $1 million, I couldn't. But if I knew how to play chopsticks, I'd be a lot closer to learning how to know how to play Tchaikovsky. If I knew how to play an Elton John song or a Billy Joel song, I'd be much closer to being able to learn those things. And that's where you are in CrossFit. Mm-hmm. And that's where even our more advanced teachers are, when they're like, holy cow, I'm not Michael as a first-year teacher trying to figure out how to use popsicle sticks and getting eaten alive by my students, but more somebody who's further along and is like, oh God, I didn't think about having students self-assess their own mastery using rubrics that I create. I didn't think about that. At the end, I usually just check it for them. But I will say one thing, Tara, to your point from a moment ago around teachers not being able to change their leaders. That might be true. It's probably true in terms of like the entire way that a leader operates. But I do encourage teachers to ask their leaders to show them. Hey, can you show me that? Not in a gotcha way, not in an unkind way. I don't know your relationships with your bosses if we have teachers on here. I hope they're good. I hope your leaders are open to feedback and open to pushes from you. That's what the best leaders do. But I do think that it is well within a teacher's right, when they get feedback on something, to ask to see it. And if you're expecting me to do this thing, I'd love to see it. Can you model that for me? Can we practice it a few times? You may just change your leader's practice if that's not part of what they do right now.
I like that. It's so important. And it also lets them know, like, I want to do it. I just want to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
I'm curious. What does that even look like? This is amazing. I think this is such a great conversation too. And I really appreciate you diving deeper into this modeling. We have a few comments over here. I thought we'd pull up. This one's taking up your whole face. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Dawn. It's a huge issue. The infrequent observations. I can always tell. We visit a lot of schools. When I walk into a teacher's classroom and they stop and look at us and say, yes, It is a huge red flag that the leader is not in classrooms nearly as often as they should be. When we walk in and it's business as usual, that's a great sign. And Dawn, to your point, that's an unfair paradigm for leaders to set up with teachers. We should have a culture of continuous improvement in every building, and that starts with frequent observations, not twice a year, frequent observations, feedback meetings, etc.
Yeah, one of the practices I love too, like if I've not been, especially at the district office, when you hadn't been in everybody's classroom all the time, it's just impossible. And you come in, I loved starting those conversations with some kind of humble inquiry. Like there's no right answer. I just kind of want to know, what did you think about the lesson?
Yeah.
Curious, because they could have taught that similar kinds of lessons like all year long, and they're like, look, Johnny was off the charts today. Like, I don't know what happened, but I just continued on. But I can tell you right now, typically when he does when a kid behaves like that, I usually can do this and this, and it works just beautifully. But today it was totally off. I love giving them that opportunity. And that's why I call it humble inquiry. And I got it from the title of the book, Humble Inquiry. I just got that idea from that book, but I love just entering with a question like, I'm not judging you. I'm just curious, like, what did you think? Kind of figuring out, because sometimes where they want to go, their teachers are often way harder on themselves than we would be anyway. I feel like in general. And so a lot of times where they want to go, I'm like, well, or if they think it was just a total flop, I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't think it was a flop. I think like maybe we could adjust this and that, but you don't have to throw that lesson out the door. Like it was pretty good. I think we could just work on maybe this one area where we have more opportunities to respond. There seemed like 10 different kids didn't have an opportunity to say anything, something like that. But just entering those conversations. If you feel like you're not in the classroom enough, which you should be, maybe ask the teacher, like, what did they think about it? How did they feel about the lesson? It's diving into coaching.
Yeah, and I think even the converse is you might find out that the teacher thought that something was great that you actually want to work with them on. And I wouldn't suggest that the leader pivot at that point to something different, but I do think it's valuable information for you to have. If the teacher thinks that the engagement was really high, but your data says something different, the leader might want to pivot to like, yeah, absolutely. During the bell work or the do now, whatever the school calls it, we had, 88% of kids fully engaging. And there was another point in the lesson where we were at 94%. But I also want to talk about other places. And here's why that was, those things were really high. Here are the places where it was lower. And I want to work with you to get the engagement at X, Y, and Z place as high as it was during the do now and when you introduced the objective. And so it's good data to get, regardless of whether the teacher's really hard on themselves, which I agree they often are, harder than we'd be, but sometimes they have they think something was a win, and then we want to actually work on that thing. And it's good to know that it's good to have that information so we can make sure that we do that delicately.
Well, and I think too, it goes right back to your point of why what you've been talking about all night is just all night.
Have I been talking all night?
As if all 20 minutes. all We've been talking about all night, Michael. I've been listening.
What time is this?
It gives us the opportunity to model for them. They obviously think that what they did was great. They think it was high engagement. So, like you said, we give them some props for some of the engagement. But then, how about I show you what I'm thinking might work better to get this up? This is a great opportunity for me to show you what I'm thinking. Then tomorrow we can practice it either together, co-teaching, or I can just watch you practice it and see how that's going to look. But yeah, once we know, there's no assumptions, right? At that point, there's no assumptions. We know they think that looks good. That's why they're doing it every single day. And that's why we're upset, because it's not happening the way we want it. So now we got to show them. Now we got to show them and then hold them accountable.
Yeah. And quick, I just had dinner tonight with the former CEO for the second largest hospital in New York State. And when he arrived there, employee satisfaction was in the 43rd percentile in the country. When he left, it was the 87th. When he got there, patient satisfaction was in the 9th percentile. When he left, it was in the 78th. And we had a great dinner, and I said, give me like the thing. I mean, we talked for 2 hours, and he gave me lots of things. But and I don't know who wrote this in the chat because I missed the name, but he's like, I was always on the floor. I was always I was meeting with patients. I was watching doctors, supporting them, asking people what they needed. I was in operating rooms. I was asking questions. He was always around, and there were other things that he did. I mean, it would be oversimplifying it to say that just that radically shifted the culture in his hospital. But to the point that's come up a couple times in the chat and that we've raised, like, folks, leaders have to be in it, and they've got to be able to get into the classrooms and see what's happening, and ask questions, as you said, and provide feedback. Otherwise, they're going to lose credibility. The feedback that they do provide is going to feel random and out of touch. I mean, there are a lot of teachers who don't think their bosses know what's happening in their rooms, and oftentimes they're right.
Yeah, so true. I think it's just a valuable thing for us to think about and to consider. And I love that you said, if your leader is not coming in your room that often, or they come in and they give you feedback that you truly don't know what that should look like, sound like, feel like, ask them. Yeah. Ask them to show you. I mean, they should be able to show you. And if they feel like they can't, then maybe they should be able to show you an example from somebody else's class, like, hey, okay, we'll go visit so-and-so. They do it really well. I personally don't do it that well, but I know a teacher that's doing it really well. So I'll get somebody to I'll cover your class, and you can go watch them for one class period so you can see what it looks like. And exactly. I think it's really important, like if you're the leader and you're like, I'm just not the expert in that. Well, find someone who is, and what you're looking for. So find someone who is. Maybe it's a YouTube video. Maybe it's a teacher. It would be better if it's a teacher like right there in the school that you can show them. But I think that's just really important. And also to your point about the CEO, just being present. It is huge. Present.
Yeah.
It's so huge. One of the things, even with our business, having team meeting, it's so important. Like, we do cancel it sometimes, but a lot of times we have it on Friday, and we all know that we're all doing our work. Like, we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing, but being present with our bosses is just, it builds a culture that feels like a family.
Yeah.
Feels like they really care about what you're doing. And Dave's in the building or in the chat right now, but it's important. It changes the culture of a company. And I really think being present, like if you're the leader, showing your people that I'm here, like I care about what you do. I'm available. I want to hear you. I want to brainstorm with you. I want to help you. There's just something about that. It just, sometimes it is just showing up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think being present is, and I like what Dawn wrote in the chat here. I think, Dawn, to that point, I actually had this conversation earlier. I believe, and I hope this doesn't sound cynical, but I believe a lot of leaders focus on the front office stuff. I had a leader last week who was acting as the security guard in his building. There are other people who could have done that. He chose to do it. I told him I didn't believe that this was an authentic move that he made. I gave him the feedback that I thought that he was doing it so he could avoid having to look at things like instruction and the stuff that's hard, and instead gave an excuse to his entire staff that, hey, I'm playing security guard today, so I'm unavailable. There were other people who could have done that, but he was doing it, I believe, and he acknowledged it, to avoid being in classrooms and doing the stuff that's really hard and moving the needle and giving folks really meaningful feedback. And so being present matters. As I said earlier, leaders don't have to read every single novel. They do need to know what making good assertions looks like. They don't need to know everything, as I said, from phonics to physics. they do need to know that if students aren't getting enough time to practice in the lesson, that's a problem, and that they need to be able to diagnose why and provide really actionable feedback on and coaching as to what the teacher can do differently to allow for that the next time.
Yes, I agree. Isina, I'm with you too on this too. I loved being in the classroom. In fact, I would block off time in my calendar just to get out of the office and go be in the classrooms. I loved being in the classroom. And the more we're in authentically without an evaluation, and we can just drop some little feedback on a piece of notebook paper or something.
Yeah, Post-it note. Yeah.
Yeah, the more they feel comfortable with that too. It's just a part of what we do. So yes, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us tonight. This has been amazing. This is such a great conversation. I hope others will listen to it on the playback. And I know a lot of you do watch it on the playback. You're putting babies to bed, and we've not changed our time, even though time changed. So please do comment in the comment section. We won't choose a winner until this weekend. So someone is going to win Skyrocket, your teacher coaching by Michael. And you don't want to miss out on this book. It's amazing for all. It's amazing for teachers, coaches, and leaders. It's amazing for anyone. It's just great steps for having great intentional, productive conversations, if you will. And so you definitely want to check out this book. If you're not the winner and you don't want to wait and you're not sure if you're going to be the winner, just click the link above or below this video, depending on where you're watching, and you can grab yours today. And so thank you so much for joining us, Michael. If they want to follow you or they start trying some of these practices in Skyrocket, how can they connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm at Michael Carey Sonbert at Michael Carey Sonbert at Instagram, at Michael Sonbert, and at We Will Skyrocket on Twitter. Or you could just send me an email, michaelsonbert@wewillskyrocket.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Well, there's all the great ways you connect with him. So please do reach out. And if you try any of these practices in your school system, please do tag him on Twitter. He's very active on there, and let us know. Tag at DBC_Inc. and tag at Burgess Dave. We're always looking to see all the great things that you guys are out there doing based off of the books that we're and the wonderful PD that we're putting out there in books. So thanks again, Michael, for joining. And thanks for all of you that joined over in the comments. We enjoyed your comments so much. And one of you will be chosen to win this book. But like I said, you probably don't want to wait. Just click the link and buy it. And then you can give one away.
You get a free copy too. Give it to somebody.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tara. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dave.
Of course. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.